Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another Potoo Academy webinar. This one much requested for the August webinar, all around size of prize. I am your host, Stephen Mader, Global Head of Strategy and Insights here at Potoo. I'm joined by some good friends of ours, Yvonne and Helena from Forward. Couple little housekeeping notes before we get on. Those of you that are not familiar with the Demio platform, welcome. It's very different than Zoom. We choose Demio so it doesn't feel like you're in a conference call. It feels a little tiny bit special, and we like that. So a couple things. If these slides are slightly too small for you, there should be a little tiny plus button on kind of the middle upper right of your screen. You can hit that and make the screen a little bit bigger. You can also hide the chat as well with the over button on the top right as well to make the slides a little tiny bit bigger. If you're not familiar with Potoo, I know about half of you have been to a webinar before, so welcome back, and half of you are new. So we're born out of brand protection on marketplaces. Focused primarily on helping big brands take back control of rogue sellers and unauthorized third parties selling in marketplaces. But we've continued to evolve after that. We're offering marketplace analytics services. We're looking at landscape. We're looking at competitor data. We do distribution diagnostics and category insights. And we're really excited that this is one of our big partnerships that we have with Forward, all taking bits of all of this and building it into some very specific business questions around size of prize. So if you have not joined us before, we've got a couple webinars previously that will be linked in the after action emails that come following this, which was for June. We were looking at building an authorized seller strategy, which looks end-to-end. How do you actually build it from identifying which 3PLs you want to work with, identifying which distributors you want to work with, and then building out your actual T's and C's, map compliance and communication strategy. And then finally, last month, off the back of Amazon talking about some of their new seller details that they'll be releasing, we decided to revisit an end-to-end brand protection strategy, and we had our friends from Publicis there. So some quick housekeeping. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, everyone will get the slides after. We are being brave, and we've asked all of you to be brave as well, that we have a live public chat. It's not a private hidden chat. You can chat to anyone you want. We will ask you to keep it well, PG-13 because we're approaching 5 o'clock in Europe, so PG-13 is fine. So as I mentioned before, I'm Steve Mader, Global Head of Insights here at Potoo. I'm joined by two folks who will introduce themselves a little bit later, but it's Helena and Yvonne from Forward, which is now owned by Bain Company, one of our big partners from consulting side of things. So getting stuck in, we have a couple different topics we want to dive into. So the first is a little bit of background on where the growth is coming from and how increasingly it is coming from relatively uncomfortable places. We'll talk a little bit about the way that the data that many of you are sitting on can be used in new ways. And we'll also be looking at how many different teams within your organization need to rethink the way that they identify growth opportunities using the data that they're already sitting on. We'll then hand it over to our friends from Forward, looking at size of prize. So how do you take all of the insights, all of the data that many of you are sitting on already, crystallizing it into some quick opportunistic size of prize opportunities, both for category, market, as well as market expansion. And we'll also be looking at longer term, what does this mean from a strategy reinvention point of view. And then we've got a couple of quick watch outs, in particular around when we see some of our brand partners entering new markets through marketplaces, what are some of the watch outs and concerns, particularly around distribution and what you should be doing first before you start dumping a ton of money into marketing and comms, as well as what the ideal org structure should start to look like. I know many of you at the moment are building your 2021 or even 3-year business plans or entering into that season. So the intention of this is kind of look at, well, how should you be thinking about either restructuring your teams, or if you are an army of one, what you should be thinking about prioritizing next year or the year after. Okay. So this is some US data Trust me, the UK is no better. But Q3 has not looked overly pretty so far. We have quite a lot of bankruptcies, companies going into administration, announcing redundancies, layoffs, closing stores, or shutting altogether. And I mean, obviously, the COVID and the pandemic has had massive impacts on retail, and this is not a COVID-centric webinar at the moment. But the reality is it has put significant pressure on retailers who had legacy business challenges, business model challenges, or they were trying to identify, where their place was in the world in terms of shopper value specifically. And this was just essentially too much pressure, nail in the coffin. We've seen increasing amounts of retailers stuck in that middle ground of not really sure what they should be doing, ultimately just end up closing. And this has a couple of big implications. Number one is, of course, growth is going to be harder to come from, right? So increasingly, we'll be seeing that linear shelf space, square footage growth, and how that old traditional way of growing is no longer going to fuel top line growth, particularly in developed markets like the US or Western Europe. The other side of things is if you're looking for expansion opportunities like in APAC, for example, or Southeast Asia, like many of you are on the phone, realizing that square footage growth, again, is not going to be the way forward. It's going to be digital, it's going to be e-commerce, and it's increasingly be marketplace driven, whether that is marketplace via desktop or marketplace via mobile phone and apps instead. And it's a very different recessionary impact than what we saw in 2008, 2009 during the last financial crisis, right? So we're already starting to see massive shifts towards retailers such as Home Depot for the DIY enthusiast. If I'm stuck at home, I have to build a new home office. I may as well make it a fun home office. Lots of renovations, people not moving houses, lots of renovations happening, and the digitization of this is abundantly clear, right? We see exactly the same thing with Target. Revenue grew in the last reported quarter, almost 25% year on year. Same store sales, and I know many of you thinking about Target in the US, same store sales is a massive problem with them, trying to get additional basket and traffic inside the store. That's growing significantly, which is fantastic for them. Digital sales tripling, and then Shipped, which is one of their online partners, also massively, massively growing. You could see, over here on the right-hand side, Target same store sale growth, growing astronomically in the past couple of quarters, and for very obvious reasons. Those people who want affordable indulgences and can still, have income coming into the household, can just have a little bit of affordable indulgence because they're spending less on other things like travel or commuting. They want to have a little bit of luxury if they're stuck at home all the time. So that affordable indulgence is still happening. However, what we are seeing though is for those retailers that are surviving, we are seeing them begin to hoard cash. And they hoard cash for a couple of reasons. One is because it's a lifeline. It enables them to stay solvent, and it enables them to continue to cover their debt obligations, of course. And also means that they are slowing down capital expenditures. It means that they're opening less stores. They are potentially acquiring less competitors, although there are lots of bankrupt companies at the moment, so question marks there. It also means that they enter new markets a little bit more slowly than before. What it does mean, however, is that if they are going to be investing, it is most likely in things that are going to scale relatively easily, and that is increasingly going to be e-commerce and marketplaces in particularly. There's also ways that they start to hoard cash in a little bit more tactical way. So I've got a couple lists here, but what we were seeing previously coming out of the last recession is an expansion of assortment, whether that assortment was through localized, everyone's talking about personalized and localized regional centric assortment. Everyone's talking about online, unlimited shelf space, so flooding distribution centers and EDCs with millions and millions of SKUs and products, SKU proliferation in store, line extensions everywhere, huge amounts of complexity in supply chain, range resets happening all the time to entice shoppers back into the store with something new and novel. Tons of rotation within those range resets. And then they're starting to dabble with private label, but it's still not at the level in the US in particular that you would find in Canada or the UK. If you think about what's happening now, and what we're expecting coming out of COVID and coming out of this crunch for cash, and why this is kind of leading into our size of prize analysis, we're still expecting localized assortment to continue. I think this is something that is shopper driven. It is something which needs to drive excitement and relevancy back into the store. We're going to see quite a lot of trends around, store as the center of the community, people opting into different stores based on their value, whether it's the sustainability value, eco-friendly value, social value, whatever that is. Instead of online unlimited assortment in terms of I as a retailer want to sell everything, it is going to be a little bit more marketplace centric, which means I may not as a retailer have 1 million 1 million SKUs that I buy, but I'm going to create the environment or the platform with which I can have 100,000 sellers selling 1 million products instead, right? So this is the Amazon Marketplace 3P model. We're going to start to see SKU rationalization, SKU reduction. You saw this right at the outset of the pandemic back in March, April, and May, where you may have retailers, saying, I know we said that we want 100 different SKUs. I want one SKU, and I want 100 different facings of that one SKU. So it's all about simplification of supply chain and distribution. And I would expect that to continue, not just for the simplicity's sake, but for reducing the overall cash on hand that they have to worry about from an inventory cover point of view. We're already starting to see many retailers shift towards twice yearly range resets, and the rotation within that is already starting to come down a little bit for many retailers. There will still be some rotation in order to drive excitement, but I would expect that to be both localized assortment as well as seasonal assortment. And we're seeing quite a lot of excitement around private label ownership. So stay tuned for a little bit more information. An upcoming webinar, probably in November or so, where we look a little bit deeper into retailers' private label opportunities. So you have to take a bit of a step back, right? And remember, like, where does modern chain retail actually excel, right? So lots of different pressures that we're seeing: stores closing, linear shelf space decreasing. The stores that are being built are smaller in nature. And where they do a really good job of is around that aggregation of supply and demand. That's why chain retail existed, in the first place, probably back in the 50s and 60s, which was, I need to be a house of brands. I need to be convenient. I need to have a one-stop shop where shoppers can come in, buy all the different brands within their grocery shop, for example, and then go home. And then the enticement for the brands is, I've got one place where all the shoppers are coming in, and it's a very convenient location. E-commerce and marketplaces in particular are no different. And this is what we're seeing now as next evolution 2020 onwards. It's less about how can I build my own 1P environment of this, and it's now, as a retailer, how can I aggregate as much supply that I may or may not own myself in order to entice as much demand as I possibly can from shoppers, because that's a very synergistic relationship, and it's very familiar from an Amazon flywheel point of view, right? The more traffic I have, the more sellers I attract. The more sellers I attract, the more selection I attract, which increases my customer experience. And all of that amazing growth lowers my overall cost structure, right? That they can reinvest back into the cost structure, reinvest back into the price. So I'm not going to go into Amazon's business model. Everyone on the phone knows what that is. But the reality is, I think when we start to think about, where some of our largest retail partners are going, to think about Walmart in particular, it's exactly the same business model. And what many people don't realize is that Amazon and Jeff 100% idolizes Mr. Sam, so Sam Walton. Back in the day, when he was just starting out with Amazon, he was essentially giving every single new executive team member joining Amazon Sam Walton's book. So he's modeled the growth structure and the business model and the flywheel essentially after Walmart, which is, the more that I can buy for less, invest into EDLC, and operate for less based on everyday low cost, the more I can invest in the prices. The more I can invest in prices which sells for less means I can grow my overall sales because I'm enticing that shopper in, right? So when we start thinking about where Walmart is moving, they're focusing on two big things. One is, by investing in marketplaces, what we see in the US with Shopify integration, is they are essentially investing in both operating for less, because this is not something they have to buy. They just plug it in. Any Shopify store member can activate the Walmart app. Once they're approved, they can sell on Walmart Marketplace, and immediately that offers up anyone selling through Shopify in that market all of the eyeballs and all the traffic that you can exist within Walmart. So it's a huge win-win for Walmart, and it's a huge win-win for shoppers as well as the Shopify sellers. So we see Kroger experimenting with exactly the same thing, right? So if I can expand my selection as well as operate for less, it's incredibly powerful for my economic model around I need to hoard cash to be a little bit more solvent. And I also need to expand assortment, expand selection, and increase my overall shopper value. So we're seeing Kroger, for example, work with two big partners at enabling both of this. So we're partnering with Miracle, who over here on the left-hand side, you can see all the other marketplaces that they are powering. They are essentially a marketplace B2B enablement platform. They are also partnering with Ocado, which is the UK's leading pure play online grocer. You've heard us talk about Ocado quite a bit before around best practices for online grocery shopping. And Ocado is powering all of their e-grocery distribution centers where they're building them out. So this is automated, it's all robotic driven, it is fast flow through. It is intended to overall lower the cost structure. So Kroger here is following exactly the same mentality that Amazon and Walmart are. It's expanding assortment and decreasing the overall cost to serve, which is ultimately benefiting the shoppers. So when we start thinking about this, right, it's not just thinking technology companies first are the where I'm going to be thinking about marketplaces. It essentially is the new business model with which many of our legacy largest customers are going to be fueling their growth for the next couple of years. Same store sales outside of this recent impact, still growing relatively slowly. New store growth, not as fast as it used to be. It is no longer possible in many developed markets to grow your top line faster than the market average by only focusing on your largest customers. It's no longer good enough anymore. So the big question then, which I'll ask Lindsay to launch the poll here, which is how are marketplace platforms actually integrated into your market expansion framework? If you cannot see the poll, it's over on the right-hand side, kind of where the chat window is. All right, we've got a couple answers coming in about chasing shopper traffic, which I think is a good sign. That's fantastic news. So the focus group of the collection on the webinar, making me very pleased. This is great news, because so often is the case, you may have an operational business model that's getting in the way. So for example, I've seen some brands that from a customer segmentation point of view, they only work with customers that actually hold inventory, that actually have a buying team that you can sell stuff to, which is not a very feature-centric approach to customer segmentation. So I love the fact that many of you on the phone, many of you on the line at the moment are actually embedding a shopper-centric traffic view into identifying which customers are going to be fueling your growth. That's absolutely fantastic. Rather than biggest customers, most strategic fit, that segmentation model is no longer good enough. So that's fantastic news. Okay. So how do you take advantage of this growth? So this model comes to us from Kantar. I've used it before, and I really like how simple it is. So the way that you read this is, on average, as you start to think about identifying how you're going to grow a company, you have to think through how does the business operate from a go-to-market strategy point of view. So on average, most companies go through this cycle. They have a 3-year business plan, maybe a 2-year business plan, but it's usually a 3-year business plan with must-win battles that are assigned by the executive team or the board. Those processes usually include category strategy, portfolio innovation, new product development, maybe some M&A, or maybe market entry, like we're talking about today. From then on, once that's locked in, the market groups or the regions or the clusters start to activate within it. So they start thinking about, okay, what's going to be my trade promo strategy? Which JVPs are going to be my focus JVPs? How do I actually start to think about marketing activation and my trade promos? How do I then start thinking about inventory allocation to my most strategic customers if I'm running short on inventory? Once that's all locked in, it gets into execution mode, which is in year, right? So it goes to the discounter team, it goes to the grocer team, it goes to the e-commerce team, it goes to potentially the field sales, wholesale distribution team. And this is all executional, and this is very one way. There are very few companies that go the other way around or have feedback loops that go back. So what I mean by that is leading companies need to move into a direction which is, okay, if I'm going to be building my 3-year business plan, most likely in Q3, which is right around now, for the next 2021 to 2023 or something like that, how do I start to bring in what best practice should be for marketplaces or for e-commerce, or what are the discounters doing, and how does that impact market entry? My M&A, do I go off and acquire a digital native brand that helps me accelerate through direct to consumer? How does it impact the way that I build my portfolio? If I'm increasingly getting killed on Amazon due to margin loss and unprofitability because my average price points are too low because I can't do bundle packs as part of my supply chain, then this is where that customer input goes into the category strategy or portfolio innovation process, such that you begin to bring into account, like, I need to hit $15 average selling price to be profitable on Amazon. How do I ensure I have a very significant part of my portfolio which hits that price point or above? So when we start thinking about size of prize in particular, we start thinking about, okay, what type of data do these executional channels kick out in such a way that I can lift and shift it back into my planning process that's 3 years out, right? All of this data is not just about executional optimization. It actually can inform significant amounts of stuff that is more strategic and long-term in nature. One of the other big challenges that I see is the definition of a customer tends to be retail-centric, and I'm absolutely delighted. And maybe it's a bit, self-selecting that all of you are on the webinar today, around we're chasing shopper traffic to fuel our customer segmentation and our growth, which is awesome. But so often is the case, the definition of a customer is brick and mortar retail that may or may not have an e-commerce channel, or it's 1P only e-commerce. And when we start thinking about marketplaces, whether that is Amazon Marketplace, Cdiscount Marketplace, Mercado Libre Marketplace, it could be Gojek, it could be Shopee in Southeast Asia, whatever it is, it tends to be who actually owns it. Is it a marketplace in that it is a media vehicle and a marketing channel, in which case it should be owned by marketing? Is it a retailer, in which case it should be owned by a customer? But if it doesn't fit the customer segmentation model, then I can't have a key account manager calling on it because there's no buyer there. So how can I actively manage it from a negotiation selling in point of view? So we're in this interesting phase at the moment for many organizations. The leading ones are already there, which is that they've realized that sales and marketing in an e-commerce world is exactly the same thing. There's no difference between sales and marketing in an e-commerce channel. Marketplaces in particular need to be the next evolution of that. And the reason why we're discussing that quite in depth is that when we start thinking about market expansion, size of prize, and growth opportunities top line, we need to make sure we're covering all of our bases, which means we can't just be thinking about, well, how do I marginally, incrementally change the relationship with Amazon? It needs to be much larger than that and think about new sources of growth from completely unknown channels. So when we start thinking about, well, how can the data I'm already leveraging or already acquiring or already paying for or already using, how can that be leveraged to help me identify where else I can grow? So we're going to use Potoo data as a bit of an example here. And many of you are familiar with the Potoo data analytics platform, so this will be a bit of refreshing. And those of you that don't know about it, welcome to what we do. So we essentially have 2 core product lines. One is data analytics. So we essentially are tracking every single product for your category on third-party marketplaces, whether that is Amazon or eBay or Bol.com marketplace, whatever that is, where a distributor or a reseller or a 3PL is selling your products, we are tracking listings, sellout data where we possibly can, like with Amazon, as well as everything that's on a product detail page, right? Many of you are using content analytics where you're tracking, images and hero images and product description compliance and all of that amazing technology. We're scraping the entire product set as well. Now, the other side of the equation is the brand protection element, which is what we're quite known for. And all of the data analytics powers the brand protection element, because you need to be able to identify, well, where am I having challenges around rogue items, unauthorized sellers, non-compliance to MAP or non-compliance to authorized terms and conditions. So we're powering all of that with our marketplace analytics dashboard. The challenge is, as often is the case, that tends to be where it stops, is data powers the brand protection. Even though many of our partners are paying for the data, they're not leveraging in all the different parts of their business that they possibly can. So I want to walk you through some examples of that. We start thinking about a typical use case. We start thinking about, okay, brand protection for shampoo, and I'll tell you why we're thinking about shampoo in a moment. We start thinking about, okay, well, what's here? So we go to amazon.co.uk, search for shampoo, and identify, well, what's in the product catalog, what's in the results page here. And we can see, okay, we've got a bundle pack here, number 2 listed items, Amazon's choice, fantastic. So we go into it, and what we realized is this is sold by a third party, no surprise. It's FBA, which is great from a shopper point of view. It's a little bit under 10 pounds. Fine, and it looks like it's got relatively robust hero images. It's got a good title, well thought out description. So it's not on fire. We're doing okay. What we then go back to and realize is, okay, well, from a boots.com, if I want to go shop on Boots, what should be the normal price point for these specific solutioned SKUs individually? And I realize that they are on offer for £3 each. So now if I go back, I realize, okay, well, from a brand protection point of view, this is potentially a rogue SKU in that it is non-general catalog. It has been built specifically by these 3PLs to satisfy a need. It's being sold significantly above MSRP, above average selling price in the market. So we start to get some question marks around, should we be going after these specific sellers? So what we start to see now is this is where the average brand stops, right? They say, okay, I got a high-ranking ASIN sold by a 3P, fine. It's a solution bundle, not general catalog, question marks there. Significant deviation from MAP or MSRP, all right, we'll dig into this a little bit. Is it an authorized seller? Is it an unauthorized seller? And then we decide in partnership with the legal team or the e-commerce team within the brand, should we put them through a brand protection process after that around identifying where they're sourcing inventory from. That tends to be where the average brand stops. Now we're constantly being asked, well, what do leading brands do with Potoo data? Well, this is only one use case. What else can we be doing with it? What could we be doing to accelerate even faster? So we start to think about, well, okay, going back to that first page of shampoo, what else can we learn about? Well, we can see we've got some shampoo SKUs here around smooth skin. We've got some around an actual bundle pack like we discussed before. So there's obviously a built-up, pent-up, latent demand opportunity here. We have some ingredients-based ones here around biotin and collagen, hair thickening solutions, sulfate-free shampoo, clearly important. The price per unit higher on these specific ingredients as well. We see active charcoal knows no bounds. It is the hotness that everyone's going after. Nivea is now using it for men's shampoo. I personally love it because it's in a gunmetal bottle. Obviously, that's also very important to me because I love gunmetal. So what we're now learning from this is we can start to tease out, since we're already tracking all of these ASINs from a brand protection point of view, we can start to identify trends in ingredients, trends in bottle sizes, trends in average price points, trends in solution selling as well. And all of these insights are essentially real time, right? And so many of you are leveraging this insights data for, from whether it's from Nielsen or IRI or Kantar or NPD, GfK, whoever it is. That's all incredibly robust amazing data, but it tends to be lagging indicators. We look at your past quarter or past 8 weeks worth of performance. What this data allows you to do is you combine it in real time, because this is scraped every day, right? So you can start to identify fair share of category, identify growth drivers around charcoal gunmetal bottles, for example, see what your competitors are doing from an NPD point of view. You can start to track compliance around distribution, and you can start to track average selling price. So when I'm talking about that tactical insights, that's that in-year or in-channel process, right? And we start thinking about longer term, going back to that 3-year must-win battle horizon. We start thinking about, okay, how can I leverage all this data for portfolio innovation? How can I leverage this for not just M&A, but the due diligence on a competitor or a tertiary brand I'm trying to acquire? How can I figure out, are they flooding the market? What's their average selling price? Is it up or down? What's their margin structure? All of that. Looking at 3PLs, which partnerships should I leverage when I'm entering new markets, which Yvonne will talk to us a little bit about as well. And then increasingly looking at size of prize analysis in terms of how, if I want to grow and enter new markets, A, which marketplaces should I be focusing on? And then B, how do I ensure that I'm positioning my products in the right way, at the right price points, at the right catalog, to ensure that I'm filling a white space in the market rather than just copying and pasting what I'm doing in other markets. Okay. So final poll question. So ask Lindsay to launch poll number 2. Which departments within your organization, that could be a full team or it could just be a one department of one person, where do you feel like this type of data could be best leveraged? Or where, if you had a wish list, where would it be? Consumer shopper insights growing, corporate strategy growing, brand and category growing. Interesting. Demand planning is not there, which is okay, I suppose. A little bit of love to the demand planning teams, particularly around out of stocks and being able to get a good understanding of what's happening from an out of stock point of view, especially from your authorized resellers, I think is important. But yeah, completely agree. Brand and category teams and consumer and shopper insights tend to be the teams that, from our leading brand partners, the most advanced, they are the ones that are leveraging the data the most, because this type of data, it's a playground for them. It is completely untapped. It is a place where they can identify very, very quickly gaps in the market what their competitors are doing. And it does not require a ton of interpretation and downloading of PowerPoint slides. It's bonus points as well, as for many folks who are leveraging this type of data as part of their quarterly planning process. If they are already using a big data, business intelligence, visualization reporting tool, this is a very easy plugin for that. So moving on to the final kind of outputs of this. When we start thinking about size of prize, incredibly important to start thinking about what is my actual definition of success, right? Is it I need to create a more robust route to market? I need to identify places where I can enrich the assortment. I need to capture demand or different eyeballs or different audiences for new shopper types that I may not be comfortable already serving. Or potentially I need to do some risk reduction. I'm overly reliant on Amazon and Walmart. Who else can I partner with in a relatively cost-effective way in order for me to drive overall top-line sales? Okay. So that's it for me for my upfront section. Let me hand over to our friends Yvonne and Helena, who hopefully are unmuted and can kind of take it from here.
Hi all, happy to be here with our data partner Potoo. I'm Helena Carr, and I'm part of the data insights and analytics expertise within Ford at Bain. I come from the CPG client side, and I can actually see some of my colleagues from the industry in the call. So nice to meet you guys again. I've also worked for different retailers in the UK and Canada as well. So over to you, Ivan, for intros.
Hi, my name is Ivan. So I'm a MarTech specialist for Forward, but I have done a very large number of e-com cases as well, because obviously technology is by default integrated into how you do e-com. So we work with quite a bit of clients in CPG and technology and retail as well. So very quickly on what is Forward. Forward is part of Bain Company. So we are a marketing team of hands-on specialists covering America, EMEA, and APAC. We are a team of over 100 people now, and we specialize on hands-on experience and end-to-end delivery of test and learn capabilities and enabling our clients to deliver these ambitions on marketing as a whole, but e-com is one of the very big SKUs that we offer, and quite a lot of work, especially now in these times. So taking a very practical approach to this, so let's say you're a shampoo brand. So in this case, will be my name shampoo brand, because why not? And just to set the scene, we are kind of a mid-market position product, high quality, decent enough price. People are quite happy with the value, and we play a number of categories, and we have a few R&D opportunities to potentially expand if we find an additional market niche that seems interesting. In terms of our market, we are based in the US and we have strong presence on Amazon there, but we are feeling that we have opportunities in other geographies. So we find that this is actually a situation a lot of our clients and companies in general find themselves in. You max out one opportunity or one country and you're looking where to go next, but then it's usually harder the next time around. So there are 3 steps to identify the size of price that we usually approach. So first is obtaining reliable data. Without data you can trust, it's actually very hard to make any predictions, especially given the fact that you're already planning ahead. Identify areas of opportunity. So the easiest way would be we're just going to target the whole of shampoo market, but there's many different shampoos, there are many different players, there are many different sellers, and doing that top-down approach doesn't actually work as well. And finally, you actually want to estimate how much this is going to cost. And going through this exercise, you will find areas where could have seemed like a very good idea, but actually when you size it and when you understand what the difficulties are, you may realize that there are others which are better. And this is what we help a lot of our clients to achieve. So in terms of obtaining reliable data, so you want your data to answer a number of questions. So mainly, who's your competition, how sophisticated they are. That can be technically, that can be SKU levels, how well their PDPs, product display pages, are set. How often do they run out of stock? And also which products they're selling, which brands they're selling. Are these brands owning their own products, or is it all 3P, and so on and so forth. So for this one, we've partnered with Potoo because their data is indeed reliable and robust, and which gave us quite a lot of actually interesting aspects to have a look at and size the price. But the main question you want, of course, is there a space for me to play and win? And can you do that? So in terms of identifying areas of opportunity, the easiest way is to start actually reflecting on yourself and on the category. So this is where category discovery can come into play. So what we've done is we looked at Amazon Germany data from Potoo here, and we looked at what types of brand and what types of kind of categories are available, how many products there are, how many brands there are, how many sellers, and kind of how much are they selling. And then we just kind of looked at what are interesting points. So actually, mattifying was a complete surprise for all of us, because mattifying is apparently shampoo that makes your hair more matte, and it's very popular. It sells loads, by far the most, but at the same time, there's only a few brands and a few products, so that seems interesting. And also, for example, damage and repair, similar categories, quite a large share of wallet, but at the same time brands not that many, so that's interesting. On the other hand, anti-dandruff and moisturizing are massive categories, lots of products, lots of brands, lots of sellers. So maybe as an entry point, especially for us as a new entrant, may not be the best way to look at it. So what we've done is we double clicked into mattifying, and this is kind of a time jump because there's a lot of playing with the data you can do. So you can look at SKUs, you can look at products, you can double click into different things. But for this one, I've just looked at sellers, and I've realized that there's one seller which is leading by far, but they seem to be out of stock most of the time. So there's just a very simple gap that I can plug because people seem to be buying this product, but this seller cannot fulfill it. So maybe my product, which may be similar, can go for that. And there are a number of sellers there similarly. So this is my gap in the market, that there is demand which outstrips the supply or ability of the sellers to deliver. And then I can see and I can enter that gap. And that gives me an estimate of how much I can get in the first time when we enter. On the other side, there's a bit more qualitative aspect to this. You always need to have a look at what your competition is actually doing and what categories looks like. So for Germany, shampoos, actually, there are some very sophisticated players in terms of product display pages. So this one scores 75% on the rubric that we do to assess these things. And that means that I need to prepare quite a bit to enter this market. I'll need more images. I'll probably need videos. I'll need A+ content to round it out. So this is a more difficult category in Germany to enter, but it's lucrative. It has a lot of potential, so why not? And finally, I need to align with my current capability and strategy. So as I mentioned, we are mid-market, mid-price, so this works for us. But if our priority first is not mattening shampoos and something else, we need to consider that. So you can't just turn your priorities just for a marketplace, because that's will go against the general strategy that you have, and you may not necessarily be able to fulfill the demand if it goes against what your company specializes in. And thirdly, so this will be kind of on a high level, depending on your teams and ability and willingness to kind of go very deep into the models. We usually do, is layer these assumptions, layer estimations. So we included e-com market growth at about 2%, which may be higher given the recent focus on marketplace and online shopping. The gap opportunity, so that comes from that unfulfilled demand from customers. So I can easily fill about 20% that these sellers currently don't fill. An additional uplift, this is what we would do. We look at marketing opportunities to optimize those product display pages, and additional drive of customers that we can get. So that's say 10% based on our benchmarks and just general expectations and experience that we have, and kind of feeding that all the way through. We see that for Germany, on Amazon, we have about 500,000 a year initial opportunity. What we've done here as well is just sense check with the market data, with the sales data, with other benchmarks, just to make sure that this makes sense. Because sometimes either through generous estimations, you realize that you're aiming for 20% of the entire market, which may not be quite achievable, especially for a first market entry. And what we end up with is once you repeat this process for Germany, for Amazon Germany, for Amazon UK, for Allegro Poland. So Allegro is the largest e-com player, marketplace player in Poland. So actually that is a better entry than Amazon, because most of Amazon is actually cross-border. Is where we looked at and we sized it. And actually, while Allegro seemed to be having a lot of shampoos in the categories that I was looking at and we were good at, it's not as big of an opportunity, especially in the short term. So perhaps Amazon will still be best. In fact, UK one is probably much more lucrative. But again, you can kind of look at it and then double click. Maybe there are other shampoos and maybe there are other opportunities that you can explore in the long term once you've started with your initial market entries. So this kind of covers the first part where you size the price, understand where you want to enter. And now Helena will show us what happens after some time once you've already entered and you have other opportunities to have a look at, where Forward can also help if you're already in the market and looking to take your analysis.
Thanks, Ivan. So let's set the scene now. It's been 1 year since Shampoo & Co. launched its marketplace presence in Germany. We've used the market sizing exercise that Ivan has gone through, and it's been a year. With the real-time data that we have available from Potoo, we started to observe some cross-border challenges also affecting the marketplace. But I have a question there, and my sales team, they are kind of, hey, our performance targets are based on local net sales value overall. And now what? How is this impacting us? Additionally, the data provides the top resellers that start to give us some visibility on distribution leakage potentially. And alignment of objectives is required to obtain more control over it. So digging further to the fully automated dashboard, we can see that some categories actually, we have percentage of cross-border almost 90%, which is quite high, let's say in color protection in Amazon Germany. And then in repair is like almost 70%. And then with the data, then we are able to understand the challenges and then could see them as actually an opportunity to put some action in place to make the most out of it. So some of the potential drivers that we can dig down to the data are price and promo, as well as margins, could be something to investigate further. The quality of product, maybe some other countries they claim or they have actually better quality of products. Stock availability, maybe this is something that we should consider. Is this something that we have currently an operational problem and we need just to tackle it to minimize the cross-border challenges? Likewise, like mattifying category, as per Ivan's example, could be a category, a new category to enter in other countries, for example, as well. So we may see that locally we don't have the product and resellers are selling it, but should we size the opportunity then to enter this different category, the new category? Star reviews as well, sometimes this could be impacting and we are not aware of, which is probably linked to the quality of product. And finally, we may have some issues with the local market resellers. So the data is pretty detailed to provide us with the better visibility and get actionable insights from it. Now, so the data now we have 2 years. Now let's move a little bit forward in time. And we can start using some more cool advanced analytics techniques to predict the drivers for growth or decline in marketplace. Because you have all the attributes, you have many like price, promo, stock availability, etc. The star reviews. So Shampoo & Co. Now, they're established and they're using the data to optimize the levers. But the next question, aligned with what Steve talked about in the beginning, is around, is there any other growth opportunities within other marketplaces? So for example, eBay could be one, Groupon another one, Allegro if it is in Poland, for instance, another marketplace potential opportunity. So with the joint expertise of Potoo and Bain, the brand now has robust marketplace policies, all data-driven, in place. And the company focuses on the strategic authorized resellers. The cross-border challenges now have been tackled. Obviously, there is a need for continuously monitoring, hence the data is still super relevant, the real-time dashboard. We can see a more price stability, especially if you consider like 1P in Amazon. Product availability is already fixed. The consumers are now happy and well served by Shampoo & Company. So with the fully automated dashboard, we can now predict the drivers for growth and decline for the current market and still the opportunities in other markets and other marketplaces opportunities. So that's it from us, Steve. Over to you.
About the way that they've approached this is, and just to be very upfront, that's actual live data. So those are, anyone's in the shampoo category, is a freebie insight there that you can go off and start accelerating through Amazon UK, I suppose, for white space opportunities. So I love the simplistic and pragmatic approach, right? Which is identifying different category growth drivers and not just looking at listing share, but actually looking at where can I incrementally fulfill demand, which may not be actually met by the existing parties that are selling the products. So often is the case that we're looking at what happens directly from Amazon, but there may be some third parties that are in there selling products already that Amazon can't fulfill themselves or won't meet the demand themselves because they could be crapping out, for example. And what their example shows is that if you actually look at like out of stocks, not just on Amazon, but out of stocks with the 3Ps as well, you can identify where else some potential opportunity actually arises. So what I want to do now is, just before we finish out, look at the two big watch outs that we've seen many of our brand partners explore and make sure that they are not going down too many wrong paths. So the first one is very much looking at overall route to market from a distribution point of view. So if you're entering a new market, you can't just switch on a marketplace like Allegro and then expect everything to be sunshine and rainbows. The reality is, for many of our brands, they may already be being sold on marketplaces, whether it's Allegro or Amazon in a different market, you may not be operating indirectly. Or if you're thinking about acquiring a company or bringing in a legacy brand from, say, the North American market into Europe, the product may already be here. So we need to identify, well, from a distribution point of view, what do I do first, right? Do I need to clean up the marketplace first, or do I just need to accelerate, put my foot on the pedal and just go? So we create a little model for you. I can't help myself. A 2x2 4-box model is very important for anyone. So number one here, looking at, okay, if I have relatively low direct sales in that market or no direct sales in that market, and it has been distribution led, as market entry from, say, 20 years ago, before we start accelerating through marketplaces directly, we need to rein and control back in, because otherwise all you're doing is just shining a flashlight on pricing chaos which may exist in that market. So it's ensuring that you have a very robust kind of control policy in place around what your expectation for an authorized distributor is for marketplaces in particular. If you have the exact opposite, which is extremely high direct sales, and you're thinking about potentially expanding into a market or accelerating through a marketplace through a 3PL, whether that could be bundled products, for example, that your supply chain can't do themselves, it's all about managed sustainable growth. You're actually in quite a privileged position here because you have relatively active control over your assortment and your distribution base, and you can kind of let the line out a little bit here and there on specific products or specific lines in order to see where the growth is going to come from. And if it starts to get out of control, you can rein it back in afterwards. So it's all about sustainable long-term growth. If you have no direct sales and there's no distribution volume whatsoever, so it's a brand new blank sheet of paper market, you have to grow. You have to grow. But it's important to keep in mind e-commerce and marketplace dynamics first, rather than the potential, way that we used to do market expansion, which is distribution or traditional trade or 2 or 3 core strategic retailers first, and realize that if it is a marketplace-driven environment, like many emerging or growth opportunity markets are, like in Southeast Asia, for example, for many of us on the line, then we have to start thinking 5 years out and start thinking about, okay, if I'm going to be using distribution-led growth in those markets, making sure that I have a very strict policy around e-commerce distribution in place, or choose offline store-only distribution and then e-commerce distribution primarily for servicing online players. And then finally, if you have high direct sales, high distribution, which is you've adopted a policy of sell everything everywhere, which some of us actually have, then it's important to start thinking about, okay, how can I grow sustainably? It's not just about top line sales. It's about sustainable, profitable, manageable growth, both for the brand as well as for the retail partner, as well as actually for the shopper as well. So in that case, you start thinking about, do I actually have the right assortment, or should I be delisting certain SKUs which are just constantly causing us chaos? Should I be sense checking my commercial policy before I hit the go button on accelerating top line through retail media or e-commerce search ads? And instead look at, well, how can I actually ensure that the money I'm putting into search and media is actually hitting my 1P or authorized sales first, rather than just fueling third-party chaos? Let's make sure we sense check our commercial policy first. Okay. The second component of it is around org design. So I think many of us are going to have the first two here, which is around, I have an e-commerce team, and that e-commerce team could be pure play and the .com components of the multi-channels. They could be completely separate. You have your Amazon team, and then you have your .com merchandisers, .com key account manager report directly into the brick and mortar accounts. Doesn't really matter. That's totally fine, whichever way works for you. But you have essentially that core mass pure play e-commerce experience. You also have your direct-to-consumer team. That's what you have direct-to-consumer channel as well. The two new ones, which we're seeing increasingly being interesting, is you also have an e-commerce team directly focused on new platform growth. And that new platform growth could be marketplaces, because it doesn't not nicely fit the model. It could be Instagram shops. It could be Facebook Marketplace or Facebook shops. It could be Instacart. It could be Uber Eats. It could be Deliveroo. It could be all of these more platform-centric retailers, which don't hold inventory but still require a brand presence. So that's one to watch for. And then the final one is around M&A. So many of you may have an M&A arm. They're focused on big, massive mergers with competitive set, but we are increasingly seeing many, many big brands try to fuel growth through buying digital native brands, which have 15 SKUs, highly engaged on Amazon or through their own digital native channels, and then start to bring that into the fold. And the idea behind these two over here on the right-hand side is that these are increasingly becoming the new. Whereas, 5 years ago, Amazon was the new. Amazon's now core business, day-to-day, table stakes. You can no longer have that separate. They can't be off doing their own thing. They now become part of the traditional go-to-market strategy of everything. And now the new stuff is around the new platforms and then M&A. Now, the successful businesses will be the ones that can run at this two-speed process, which is identifying things that you want to scale out of new platforms and bringing that back in to the core e-commerce business, which covers the traditional brick and mortar bricks and clicks, as well as the pure play Amazons, for example. Okay. That's it from us. Those of you that can stick around, we can answer questions. But otherwise, would love to thank our partners from Forward at Bain. Yvonne and Helena, thank you very much. All of the attendees, again, thank you very much. Next steps from us, you'll be getting recordings, the slides in your inbox shortly. And then we hope to see you for our next webinar in September. So thank you very much and have an awesome rest of the day.
Thank you.